Okay, so today we are diving deep into CMC due diligence in pharmaceutical development.
Right.
That really crucial stage where you got to make sure a drug can be made
Yeah.
and made well and
On a large scale.
on a large scale, exactly.
Yeah.
And you've sent over a stack of articles on this.
Yes.
And I gotta say, I'm kind of surprised by how many ways things can go wrong.
Yeah. It's
And
it's a surprisingly complex process.
yeah,
A lot of moving parts.
a lot of moving parts and a lot at stake, too, when
Absolutely.
you think about it.
What's fascinating about CMC due diligence is that it's about so much more than just, checking boxes and dotting your I's.
Right,
It's about mitigating risk, of course,
right.
but it's also about uncovering hidden potential. Think maximizing profitability by optimizing a manufacturing process
Right.
or avoiding a regulatory roadblock before it even appears on the radar.
Yeah, it's like the difference between just having a product and having a product that, like, takes the market by storm.
Exactly.
Right. And from what I'm seeing in these articles,
Yeah.
inadequate CMC due diligence
Yeah.
can lead to some serious consequences.
Absolutely. One article cites a case where a company failed to properly assess the long-term stability of their drug substance.
Oh, wow.
They had to pull the product from the market when it started degrading way faster than they anticipated.
Wow.
We're talking millions in losses and a PR nightmare.
Ouch. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
gotta hurt. It
Yeah.
really highlights how crucial this all is.
For sure.
And it's not just about, avoiding disasters. It's about making sure a potentially life-saving drug
Right.
can actually reach the patients who need it.
Absolutely.
And speaking of which, one of these articles really delves into the CTD Module 3,
Okay.
the holy grail of organizing and conducting due diligence.
It's the industry standard for a reason.
Yeah.
The CTD Module 3 provides this structured framework for presenting the data to regulatory bodies like the FDA.
Right.
It ensures you're not just doing the work, but you're documenting it in a way that's going to stand up to scrutiny.
So if we imagine CMC due diligence as this intricate puzzle,
Okay.
the CTD Module 3 is like the picture on the box.
I like that analogy.
That helps you put it all together.
And just like with a puzzle,
Yeah.
each piece of the CTD Module 3 is important. But for the purpose of this deep dive, let's focus on the drug substance section.
Okay.
That's where things get really interesting.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Now, the first section in our CTD Module 3 journey is drug substance information.
Right.
Sounds pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But knowing how deep this whole process goes, I have a feeling there's more to it than meets the eye.
You're right.
Okay.
This section is more than just a name and a chemical structure.
Okay.
It's about due diligence on the compound itself.
I see.
Has it been associated with any safety concerns in the past? Are there any existing patents that might pose a problem?
So it's like a background check for the drug,
Exactly.
making sure it doesn't have any skeletons in its closet.
Precisely.
I like it.
You'd be surprised how many companies overlook this step and end up facing legal battles or reputation damage down the line.
Okay. Lesson learned. Always Google your drug candidates.
Or use an AI tool to do it for you.
Right.
More on that later.
Hey, looking forward to it. Next up is manufacture,
Right.
which I imagine is all about the how of actually producing the drug.
Precisely. This section requires a deep dive into the manufacturing process itself.
Okay.
Are the facilities up to par? Is the equipment capable of producing consistently high-quality batches? What about raw material sourcing? Are there any potential supply chain vulnerabilities?
So it's not enough to have a great recipe.
Right.
You need a well-equipped kitchen and a reliable source for ingredients.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
And it's not just about the physical aspects either.
Okay.
This section also covers things like quality control measures and adherence to good manufacturing practices, or GMP.
Because a sterile lab and a documented process are just as important as the equipment itself when you're talking about pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely. And speaking of ensuring quality, that brings us to the next section in CTD Module 3, characterization.
Right.
We need to make sure we're dealing with the right drug in its purest form.
Okay, so if manufacture was about checking the kitchen and the cookbook,
Right.
characterization is about inspecting the ingredients themselves,
Exactly.
making sure they're fresh and free of any unwanted extras.
Precisely. This is where we look at things like impurity profiles, degradation products, and any potential contaminants. Remember that case we talked about earlier, where the drug degraded faster than expected? That's something that could have been caught with rigorous characterization testing.
It's like the difference between thinking your chocolate chip cookie dough has a sprinkle of sea salt
Right.
and then realizing you grabbed the container with pretzel pieces instead.
Exactly.
Not always a welcome surprise.
Not when you're baking or developing a drug.
Exactly.
Those unwanted extras can have serious implications for a drug's safety and efficacy.
Right.
This section is all about ensuring the final product is pure, potent, and predictable.
Sounds like characterization is all about taking that deep dive into the nitty-gritty of the drug substance itself.
You could say that.
Yeah.
It's about making sure there are no unwelcome surprises when it comes to the actual composition of the drug.
Right.
And speaking of control, that leads us perfectly to our next section.
And that leads us perfectly to our next section, control of drug substance, which, I don't know, it sounds like where the rubber really meets the road in terms of quality management.
It's the behind-the-scenes work that most people don't see,
Right.
but it's absolutely essential. This section is all about proving that you can consistently produce a drug substance that meets predefined quality standards.
Okay.
We're talking strict specifications, validated analytical methods,
Right.
and really robust quality control procedures.
So it's not enough to just, like, make a batch of the drug substance.
Yeah.
You need to prove with data that it meets all the necessary requirements.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Batch
sure.
after batch.
This is where things like statistical process control and risk assessment come into play.
It's about having a system in place to not only catch deviations,
Right.
but to ideally prevent them from happening in the first place.
So it's like having a really good quality control manager
Yeah,
who's
just-
constantly monitoring everything, making sure everything's running smoothly and that,
Exactly.
no bad batches slip through the cracks.
And a good quality system, it doesn't just prevent problems.
Right.
It can actually lead to a more efficient and cost-effective manufacturing process in the long run.
I like it.
Speaking of long runs, that brings us to the next crucial section in the drug substance part of Module 3 stability.
Right. Because a drug that only lasts for a week on the shelf isn't going to be very helpful to anyone.
Right.
So this section is all about making sure the drug substance can stand the test of time.
Precisely. This is where we determine the shelf life of the drug substance, identify the ideal storage conditions,
Okay.
and assess any potential degradation pathways.
One of these articles mentioned something about using kinetic modeling to predict stability.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
sounds pretty high level.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's becoming increasingly important in the industry.
Okay.
With kinetic modeling, you can use data from accelerated stability studies to extrapolate how the drug substance is likely to behave over longer periods, even years, under various conditions.
Wow. So instead of waiting years to see how a drug degrades naturally,
Right.
you can use these models to fast forward the process
Yeah,
and predict its long-term stability much faster.
exactly.
That's incredible.
It can save a lot of time and money in the long run.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's about making smart use of data to make informed decisions.
And speaking of data, the final section in the drug substance part of Module 3 is reference standards or materials.
Okay, so we've covered making the drug substance, controlling its quality,
Right.
ensuring it remains stable over time.
Yeah.
What's the deal with reference standards?
This section is all about ensuring that you have a well-characterized, highly pure batch of the drug substance that serves as a benchmark for quality control.
Gotcha.
It's like having a gold standard that you can compare all future batches to.
So it's like the original blueprint that everything else needs to match up to?
Exactly.
I see.
Having a reliable reference standard is essential for accurate analytical testing,
Right.
and it ensures consistency across batches.
Okay.
Now that we've covered the key components of the drug substance section,
Let's move beyond the traditional checklist and dive into those next-level strategies that are really shaking things up in the world of CMC due diligence.
because it sounds like the future of CMC due diligence is about more than just ticking boxes and following a standard playbook, right?
You got it. This field is rapidly evolving thanks to advances in technology and a growing emphasis on data-driven decision-making.
Okay, so let's talk about the cool stuff.
Yeah.
This one article mentions something about AI being used in due diligence. And I have to admit, I'm a little skeptical.
Okay.
How can AI really improve a process that seems so detail-oriented?
I understand the skepticism, but this isn't about replacing human expertise.
Okay.
It's about augmenting it.
Okay.
Imagine AI algorithms that can sift through mountains of data.
Yeah.
In a fraction of the time it would take a human team. They can analyze past FDA submissions, identify patterns in approvals and rejections, and even predict potential regulatory hurdles before they arise.
So instead of manually searching for a needle in a haystack,
Yeah.
you've got an AI that can instantly pinpoint its location.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
This technology can help companies make more informed decisions faster,
Right.
which is absolutely crucial in today's fast-paced pharmaceutical landscape.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What other cutting-edge strategies are we seeing in the world of CMC due diligence?
Another fascinating development is the rise of internal FDA-style reviews.
Okay.
It's essentially a mock regulatory review
Okay.
conducted by internal experts who have experience dealing with the FDA.
So it's like having a dress rehearsal before the real performance.
Exactly.
I like it.
This allows companies to identify and address any potential weaknesses in their submissions before they even reach the FDA,
Smart.
which can save months, even years in the long run.
That sounds incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
It's much better to catch a mistake during rehearsal than in front of a live audience.
100%.
Are there any other strategies that we should have on our radar?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The final strategy I want to highlight is scenario planning.
Okay.
It's about moving beyond just identifying potential risks
Okay.
and actually gaming out different scenarios to see how they might impact your project.
So it's about being proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly.
Okay.
For example, what happens if a competitor suddenly releases a similar drug?
Right.
Or what if there's a major shift in the regulatory landscape?
Right.
By playing out these what-if scenarios, companies can develop contingency plans and be better prepared for whatever the future may hold.
It's like having a backup plan for your backup plan.
Exactly.
You're not just hoping for the best.
Right.
You're actively preparing for the worst case scenario.
Precisely. And that level of foresight can make all the difference when it comes to navigating the complexities of drug development.
For sure. This deep dive has been really insightful so far.
Good.
But let's bring it all home.
Okay.
What are the key takeaways here?
Yeah.
What should our listeners really remember from this deep dive into CMC due diligence?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that CMC due diligence is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
It's about so much more than just ticking boxes and crossing our T's and hoping for the best.
Right.
It's about, proactively identifying and mitigating risks.
Absolutely.
Ensuring the quality, safety, and efficacy of a drug,
For sure.
and ultimately protecting the patients who are going to be relying on it.
Well said.
Yeah.
We've talked about the importance of that rigorous review process,
Right.
diving deep into every single aspect of that drug substance and its manufacturing journey.
We really got into the weeds today,
Yeah.
and we went beyond that traditional checklist, too.
Right.
Exploring how those cutting-edge technologies like AI
Yeah.
and those strategic approaches like scenario planning are really kind of like changing the game.
Yeah. They're really transforming the field of CMC due diligence.
Exactly.
It's a really exciting time to be in this industry.
Yeah.
As data becomes more and more central to drug development,
Right.
the companies that embrace these really advanced strategies,
Right.
they're going to be the ones who are really driving innovation and shaping the entire future of pharmaceuticals.
Totally. It's about working smarter, not harder, right?
Exactly.
And it's about recognizing that CMC due diligence,
Yeah.
it's not just a regulatory hurdle to overcome.
Right.
It's a strategic imperative for any company that wants to succeed in this like really complex and competitive market.
I couldn't agree more. Investing in robust CMC due diligence is essential.
Yeah.
It's like investing in the long-term success of your product
Right.
and ultimately the well-being of your patients.
And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
here's a final thought-provoking question for our listeners.
I like it.
You've seen the potential pitfalls of inadequate CMC due diligence, but you've also seen the incredible opportunities that emerge
Yeah,
when you approach this process strategically.
for sure.
So how can you apply these insights to make more informed decisions in your own work?
Whether you're evaluating a potential investment opportunity or maybe overseeing a critical stage in the drug development process,
Right.
the principles we've discussed today can really help you navigate this complex world of the pharmaceutical industry with greater confidence and foresight.
Because at the end of the day, it's about bringing those safe,
Yeah.
effective,
Oh,
and
yeah.
life-changing therapies to the patients who need them most.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of CMC due diligence.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.